This week has marked a turning point as America First faces new challenges, and so does our alliance with Israel.
And as Republicans debate the path forward, questions keep piling up, and there aren't a lot of answers available right now.
The story of the alleged Minnesota assassin continues to get weirder. His phone has reportedly been pinged all throughout the world over the last 3 years.
Our own Blaze Media investigative reporter Joe Hanneman will have the breadcrumbs you won't find anywhere else. He's been doing a fantastic job on this story.
And the WNBA is looking more like UFC. We'll break down how last night's brawl reflects Americans' cultural shift.
You know what, Jill? No players will be suspended after last night's scuffle. I guess it's open season on Caitlin Clark once again.
Which is never acceptable. We'll break it all down. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Good evening, Patriots. I'm Jill Savage, joined by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
You know, this is a week where all of MAGA is fighting behind that. All my friends are fighting, or at least tense. So we're going to talk about that.
We are, because President Trump right now continues to face what might be the most consequential choice of his presidency thus far in the second term, whether to deploy U.S. forces in response to the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran. He appeared on the White House lawn this morning and took questions for the first time since he held a meeting in the Situation Room.
Are moving closer, or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities? Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country.
You don't know what I'm going to do. No one knows what I'm going to do. That is very true. We're going to actually just try and put our man in D.C., Chris Bedford, on the spot, because somebody has to know what Donald Trump is going to do. You say, Chris, in your latest Beltway brief that this is a treacherous week for America First. So how so?
Actually, I'm sorry. I'm only taking flag-related questions today. If you have any questions about flagpoles, how strong they are, how big they are,
big,
Marine One's
beautiful flags
around them,
we love the flagpoles,
the importance they have in the landscape, how they make me feel, what words I use when I put them up. Those only flag-related questions. But actually is a lot going on in Washington, D.C. There's a lot going on in Iran. There's a lot going on in Israel. And the president has a treacherous path. So I'm torn on this. That's why I went through the pros and the cons in my newsletter this morning. One aspect of Trump's base said, hey, we are here to bring jobs back. We are here to put America first. We are here to drop taxes. We're here to deploy to the Middle East. Hold on a second. That was not part of any of your promises. This was not something we were supposed to use. In fact, this is something that you ran against Jeb on. Jeb, remember him with the exclamation point? This is something that you ran against Barack Obama on and his red line and all of that stuff. This is something that you ran against Joe Biden on. But hey, here we are again, possibly doing it. But here's, the other side of President Trump's foreign policy is when he ran against Barack Obama, he called him essentially a wuss. He said, you draw red lines that no one ignores. People invade Crimea when you're in charge. People don't invade Crimea when I'm in charge. You say that you're going to do this to Assad, and then you don't. Joe Biden, you say that the Taliban is going to pay, but they don't. In fact, you just leave them all of your fancy toys and helicopters. Granted, they can't even make them work with the help of the Chinese, but still. President Trump told Iran, don't do this. And he's got this kind of interesting way of cutting through foreign policy debates. For years, people watched ISIS go around bulldozing churches, crucifying priests, beheading Christians, and they say, well, what are we going to do about this? And Trump said, you just blow them up. That's it. There's nothing else to it. You go there, and then he gives a press conference as I hunted them down with dogs, and they begged like dogs and died like dogs. When he comes in with the Taliban, they say we're never going to negotiate. And he drops Moab and explodes a mountain. And then they come to the table real quick. He's hoping he can do that with Iran, but here's one of the difficulties that he faces. You don't want to topple the Iranian regime. Some members of the U.S. Senate might not know this, but Iran is a big country, significantly bigger than Iraq. It's a mountainous country like Afghanistan, but the people there are significantly more culturally and societally advanced than what we had to deal with in Iraq. They've had a Republican form of government previously. It's been 50 years now. That muscle memory is probably lost, but it's there. They're nothing like the Afghans. They're more diverse. I think some members of our Congress don't realize that. They need to expect like 60% Persian or so. A huge part of them are Azerbaijani by descent, including the Supreme Leader's own dad. There are Kurds there who are actually Sunni. There are people who practice Zoroastrianism, the world's oldest known monotheistic religion there. There's all types of folks there. They mostly have gotten along under the strong thumb of the state. But if they do something to actually collapse this government, like people like Lindsey Graham want, and some of the biggest defenders of Israel and the United States in particular seem to want, and according to leaked reports, Israel is open to, with the requests on unverified that they wanted to knock off the Ayatollah, well, that's another issue entirely. Because you know that Israel doesn't have the people or the will or the mandate to occupy in a Muslim country and try to bring stability back to it. You can't exactly count on Russia right now. They're a little tied up. China is the kind of people who are just going to steal pennies out of the sidelines and try to take as much as they can, but they're certainly not going to give back. They don't care. It's not their problem. Europe can't afford it, just straight up. So that would fall to the United States. And there's lots of people who say, don't worry, like that Reza guy. He's the eldest son of the last Shah. Well, he spent the last 50 years in exile. He left Iran in his early 20s. Since then, there may be a ticker tape parade, just like Karzai promised us when he returned, just like the original secular rulers of Iraq promised us when they returned, by the way, at the head of a U.S. military force. And it turns out they weren't actually greedy with ticker tape parades. Maybe the people of Iran say, hey, this Council of Iran's great and all, but last time we heard you were working with Saddam Hussein in a war that killed 1 million Iranians. That's what we remember about you. And as one person pointed out online, there are literal beauty influencers in Iran that have more followers than Crown Prince Reza. So he's probably not going to be able to take this over. These are going to have to come, whatever changes come in Iran have to come domestically, not at the tip of a bomb strike. And Israel knew this going in. Israel knew that they couldn't actually finish the job. They couldn't hit a plant that is a football field beneath a mountain without American bombs that they didn't have or the means of delivery. They could do some pretty impressive stuff. When the F-35s couldn't actually reach their targets, that boondoggle of a military expense, they took F-16s with pinpoint strikes. They had people on the ground. The same things they've sort of dealt with Iran for 40 years. But then you have people in the coalition saying, listen, 1985, I think, was the first reports that Iran was nearing completion of a nuclear bomb. That's 40 years ago. That's 2 Rebecca Zelkos ago. You kind of stop listening when they lied about Iraq, when they say the world's going to end with Ukraine, when they say everything that we have to do on foreign policy is because it's a WMD. People stop listening. They don't want to trust it. And the MAGA movement's potentially split. There's also a danger to the domestic coalition. Not just that, but there's a danger to Israel. I mean, the Democrats don't want any more war in the Middle East. A lot of their base is backing Hamas and Hezbollah. Like, they're literally killing concert goers, innocent civilians, and raping people and murdering babies in ovens. And the left says, those are the victims. Those are the good guys here. So they're not going to want to back Israel that much anymore. There's not a huge amount of appetite for it. And if Republicans elect a president who is a close friend of Israel, and they get us involved in a land war, well, that'll be a tipping point on the different reliance of the American people, I think, that they can count on to be there for them in hard places. So everyone has to look at this very carefully when making their next decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting how it is paused right now in sort of an uneasy way. Of course, we don't know what decisions have been made or not made behind the scenes and can change in any second. But there's this uneasy pause right now as everyone sort of looks at each other and also fights. There's a lot of fighting going on about this.
Open warfare. There are interviews dropping every day.
Yeah.
I think Ted Cruz had the last interview dropped on him.
Yeah, this is an ongoing behind the scenes and in the public war on the right. But so I would maintain that the tension is healthy, and this is an interesting example. Interesting is too lame of a word, but this is a really important example of what American foreign policy is going to look like moving forward. But here's the problem, and maybe you could speak to this. This isn't. I don't see this as a really an easy call either way, in the sense that. Ideologues on either side would say no intervention, just like when you go to the doctor, right? The MAGA people would say that intervention breeds intervention, right? So the more medical intervention you get, the more medical intervention you're probably going to receive, and that can actually end up killing you. And you would have been better, like the grumpy old man, staying the hell away from the doctor. Foreign policy is like that for a lot of people on the new right. Like, look, we are done messing around, with foreign affairs in any country, and we know what happens once you start. You go down the road, and pretty soon you'll have Lindsey Graham, with happy about his wargasm in the corner, saying we need thousands of troops to go and take over this country, right? Look at the memes online.
Trapping young boys.
The problem is though that's not very realistic when it comes to how a superpower deals with the rest of the world. If we had more trust, I could see people saying, well, of course, if we have a chance to take out the nukes here, why not? What are they going to do to us? They're not as powerful as anyone thought. That's already been proven, some people will say. We take them out, and okay, they'll declare war against us, but they'll have been, pantsed in front of the world, and they'll have been defenestrated, basically, in front of the world. And then you say, but this is the hard part, right? This is what no one believes on the restraint side, and I understand it. But then when you say, we just walk away. And, Angela Codevilla actually advocated for this decades ago for Afghanistan. Go in, take out the bad guys and the problem, and then leave. And if that doesn't sound, very nice, well, welcome to the world of foreign policy. But what you don't want to do is get it entangled. So you can see, right, the temptation to say, well, look, we have a chance to take care of this. I mean, no one wants these clowns to have, nuclear weapons, whether or not they have them or not, right? If they don't have them, right, or they're not close, okay, well, we won't have to hear about this argument for a long time if we drop the bombs, right? I mean, no one will be able to say they're 2 weeks away anymore, right? So there's an argument to say, well, you have the chance, the airspace is clear, go ahead and do it. And then just walk away. No refugees, no boots on the ground, none of that. And I have to say, yesterday we had Mike Duran on from Hudson Institute. I know many of my pals in the new right would call him a neocon, but he's not. He's sort of a realist, I think. I think truly. And his case was there's no interest. There should be no interest in creating a new regime. That's not our problem. They're going to have to sort that out. There's nothing really organized against, the radical Islamists. But we just have a chance to take out the nukes. President Trump, that's been his policy for over a decade. Let's just do it, right, and walk away. And then obviously on the other side you have, okay, sure, I've heard this before, right? Charlie Brown and the football. Do they really have this capability to really need to do this? And then if we do go in, they're going to declare war on us, and it's going to be more complicated than you think. Now, I guess I just lay all that out because I think this is not an easy answer, right? And that is something that I think we need a little grace on all the sides who are arguing right now to realize this is a kind of debate that we're going to need to have in public on the right without killing each other.
And, maybe Trump's the guy. A friend of mine who's been on the show talking about presidential facial hair, Mark Hemingway, once told me, and when I was getting ready to get married, he said, the secret to not getting divorced is don't get divorced. And that's it. I mean, there's a lot of other ways to make sure that your relationship stays healthy and strong, but sometimes you'll hit hard times in your life and you'll go through stuff and you just don't do it. And the trick to not nation building is don't nation build. You just don't do it. You walk away, the Angelo Codevilla way. And that's Donald Trump is a president who's shown a unique ability to absolutely not give a darn. He's like, we came here to do one thing. We're going to do it. We're going to do it hard. We're going to get out. I'm not coming here. I don't feel bad. I see people on Twitter starting to talk about Iranian women's rights. I tell you what, I got invited to a forum 2 months ago to talk about Afghan women's rights. If I never heard the term Afghan women's rights for the rest of my life, I would die happy. I heard it for 25 years. They never got better. A lot of Americans died. People we know, those who survived came back with war wounds and suicide and drug addiction and depression. And it's a terrible cycle that we're not willing to go through as a country, again, on behalf of every monster out there that's in need of slaying. So Trump could be the person who's uniquely positioned for that. And I wouldn't mind the idea of knocking out Iran's nuclear capability. I would like that them being on the precipice now for 40 years to not be a story still in 40 years and something that still has to be being dealt with. Of course, the problems of evil, the problems of proliferation, the problems of the nuke have been unleashed in this world and will never go away. We've known that since it was first invented. They will never go away, at least until everybody uses them all at once. Now, if there's a way to deal with it, then yeah. And I think President Trump will come out stronger if he is successful. If he pulls an H.W. Bush in Kuwait and just leaves when it's done. And yeah, bad things did happen. People who had relied on us and expected us to come in there, they never got that. And people died. And you have to live with that. You have to be able to deal with that. But you also have to ask your questions. Does this serve the just interests of the United States? And that should be the key to unlocking all American foreign policy.
Chris, in 60 seconds we have left, there's obviously this war going on within the GOP. In the administration, we see, Tulsi Gabbard taking some heat publicly, but then also people sort of coming to her rescue. I mean, we know who's who here, right? You see J.D. Vance coming out supporting the president, but J.D. Vance is obviously more on the side of restraint, and I assume pro-Tulsi, right? Do you have any sense of, is this just normal back and forth, or is there something deeper going on here?
I think it's just that Tulsi broke ranks on this one a week and a half ago when she posted a story about the dangers of World War III and hitting Iran, and has said these things in the past. There was a Camp David meeting before this war began with the Trump's cabinet. Gabbard was not invited. Probably have something to do with that video she posted, because there was dissent within the White House. We know that there are people who are more interventionist, the Hegseth types, and people who are less interventionist, the Vance types. They came out of Camp David as a one single united front. There is no peeling people apart in this administration. They are on the American agenda. They serve the president of the United States. The only official in the entire government is elected by all of America. And that's who they're standing behind. And these are decisions that he made, and you're not going to see them break ranks. And that's really important to have in foreign policy. It used to be a bipartisan thing a long time ago in a land far, far away in Washington, D.C., where you didn't criticize the president when he was abroad, where you didn't break ranks on foreign policy in public. You didn't fight in front of the children, I guess the senators might have called it in the past. Nowadays, that's out the door. Probably because of such incredible mismanagement of American foreign policy over the last 40 years, but 30 years in particular. So people are going to snipe, but this administration is in lockstep. I think Gabbard annoyed the president. I don't think she cannot recover from this. I think she could absolutely recover. But you definitely see when Nikki Haley's out there tweeting no regime change in Iran, so you don't even have her on your side. You got to wonder, is she hoping that there's a job opening in the Trump administration someday soon? She might be.
Yeah, I don't even know why people have to go through and watch like reality TV when stuff like this is going on. I mean, just look around, you guys. There's so much entertainment here right at our fingertips. And today I have learned that I need to start measuring time in units of Rebecca Zelko. One Rebecca Zelko at a time. That's what I'm going to take away. Bedford, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you then.
Don't go anywhere. We'll have the latest from the Minnesota assassins up next. We know that family farms keep shutting down, and it's because 85% of the so-called grass-fed beef It's not even from the U.S. It's actually imported. And most people have no idea. That's why you need to go to goodranchers.com, because it's not just about buying meat. It's about supporting American ranchers and getting that top tier quality and actually knowing where your food comes from. Good Ranchers sells only meat that is 100% born, raised, and harvested right here in the U.S., and you'll taste the difference. The 4th of July is right around the corner, so don't settle for anything less. Celebrate America's birthday with 100% American meat. And if you subscribe today, you can get your free pick of meat for life. You can choose from Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, or wing in every box for as long as you have the subscription. Plus, get my code Jill at checkout and get an extra $40 off. Visit goodranchers.com to shop American meat that you can trust. Remember, use that code Jill to get you free meat for life and an extra $40 off. It's Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. The latest in Minnesota is chilling. A man allegedly stalked 4 lawmakers in a police disguise before gunning down 2 and injuring 2 others. Vance Boelter was captured after 40 hours, and now he faces federal murder, stalking, and firearms charges and could possibly even face the death penalty. The latest twist in this story is an international mystery in our own backyard. A phone that was tied to the accused assassin's home pinged off in multiple places like Dubai, Nepal, India, Turkey, and more over the last 3 years. For more, let's bring in Blaze News investigative reporter Joe Hanneman, who's been writing about this for theblaze.com. So Joe, thanks for joining us tonight. So how do we get all of this international travel for a narrative that did seem so locally contained?
Well, it raises a lot of interesting questions. We're assuming, of course, this is probably his phone, considering how they use the geofencing to identify it. But, we do know that his work history did include some travel, but, and he did write about traveling to some places, but certainly not all of them that were on this list. And it raises a lot of questions as to, just exactly what those trips were for and what he was doing, if it was work-related, personal. We just don't know yet.
So, Joe, this is, by the way, great work that you're doing. People should go look at the articles that you've been publishing on this. But this wasn't a random shooting. I mean, we should just zoom out a minute before we go maybe back to this international travel. This wasn't a random shooting. This was methodical. This was clearly, in some ways, political, right? So you give the audience your sense of, what the overarching story that we know is here now, and then what are the most striking aspects of it that raise questions?
Well, it's just as a crime story, it is absolutely incredible. I mean, the evil that went into this, the planning, the stalking, the use of the disguise, the police uniform, body armor, was wearing a stun gun, but this, what they call them, hyper-realistic silicone. It's a mask, but it goes over the entire head. And these things are amazingly realistic. And in his case, he looked like something out of a horror movie. And, you can imagine him showing up at your door and pounding on it and saying it's the police. And then as the one state senator did open the door to him, and then they realized that this is not a police officer, and the terror that they must have felt when he pulled a weapon and started shooting them. So, I mean, from that standpoint, the meticulous planning that went into this, clearly a lot of forethought. He had a hit list that was in his fake police car. Most of the names on that list, if not all of them, were Democrats. Now in Minnesota, there's a strong Democrat presence in government. So we don't know, based on his writings or anything he's said to friends that has become public, if that is motivation. But he clearly targeted on that night 4 legislators. 2 of them he encountered and shot, but the other 2, one was not home, and the third one, there were already police cars outside of her residence, and that scared him off, and he moved away and went on to the final stop, where he assassinated the former Speaker of the Minnesota House.
So you've been writing so in depth on this. So what do we know about this man, this Vance Luther Boelter? What do we know about him?
Well, he's got 5 children. He's married. He had roughly 30-year career in the food industry, working for companies like Golden Plump Chicken, and that his food industry experience led him to want to open up some kind of a venture in the Democratic Republic of Congo to help that country grow more of its own food. So we know he traveled back and forth to Congo as a result of that experience. But within the past couple of years, he quit his normal job. He started out on some of these ventures. He owned a security company that I don't think was actually even operating, but he had the police vehicles. He obviously had all of the equipment that he ended up using when he went on his shooting rampage. But between the Congo business, Red Lion Group, and his Praetorian Guard security services, both of those appeared to be, say, almost fronts. They were owned by him and his wife, and he may have been trying to do good with them, but they really were not what you would call a normal business. So I believe that he was having financial troubles, perhaps as a result of all of his travel, which must have been expensive, and he was not working full time. So, he was working a night job with a couple of funeral homes to try to make ends meet. So I think he was under a tremendous amount of pressure, but none of this would explain the level of evil that he is accused of.
Joe, what's bizarre about this is, like, where's the through line? It feels as if we're missing a good piece here. But when you look at, you talk about putting together some couple of odd jobs. I mean, this guy's all over the place. I mean, it's a very strange mix of jobs and things that he's working on and obsessed with, all in one place. And yet he's not obviously completely out to lunch. I mean, he's functional, right? As a human being, he's doing a lot of different things at a fairly decent level. So what are some speculation that's going on about town about who this person was?
Well, clearly he wanted to cause terror. I mean, he sent a text message to his family, a group text, and said, "Dad went to war last night." So he used the term war. So clearly he was engaging in warfare. He visited 4 homes that night. We don't know if he was hoping to get away and try to do this on another day. But something in him, I won't say snap because we simply don't know, but something caused him to want to concoct this entire scenario. And that's what's got everyone scratching their heads. His background is unusual. It's a lot of different things, but nothing that would explain this. And, of course, you've got people pointing fingers back and forth between the left and the right. I don't think this story is ever going to end up being that simple. He has not spoken publicly, and prosecutors haven't released anything that he might have said, except he did leave a letter in a vehicle that he was driving before he was captured that admitted to the shootings. He had written a letter to the FBI. So, but explanations are just not going to be easy to be had on this. There's just something inside this guy that caused him to do this. But his background, he comes from a good family. He grew up in Minnesota, southern Minnesota. His father was a legendary high school baseball coach. His brother played for the Minnesota Twins and was another Hall of Fame high school baseball coach. It seemed like a very good family. So, there's no obvious stuff. He doesn't have a track record of showing up at abortion clinics and railing against people or writing screeds to the local newspaper. So, from that standpoint, we still it's gonna take input from him, his wife, or others that actually know him well to maybe understand what happened.
One thing I'm curious about in the time we have left is the media narrative around it, because that has been fascinating to me from the beginning. It seems as if, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm very well, maybe, but it seems as if the initial, claiming of he's right, he's left, has sort of died down. That you don't have, people on the left, for instance, being quite as loud as this guy was, MAGA and proud, and he's on you guys. As the story comes out and it just becomes confusing. Is that right or too simplistic?
Well, no, I think that's accurate. We did see finger pointing. We saw some very early blame that was tossed out there on outlets like MSNBC that immediately tried to hang it around President Trump's neck. And that there's absolutely no evidence of that. This man was appointed to workforce development boards in Minnesota by 2 Minnesota governors. So he clearly had connections in the Democrat Party. Now, his longtime friend that he grew up with, David Carlson, said that he was a Trump supporter and a Trump voter. But other than his word, there's no evidence that would back that up. So on either side, it's just not clear. The Minnesota governor has said some things that were quite hypocritical about, rhetoric and toning it down, 10 days after he was on behind a microphone saying, we got to bully President Trump. We got to get in his face and bully him harder. Well, that's incitement. So, it's not and I just don't think there's going to be a simple answer like that, they'll find some other writings where he says he's inspired by this or that. I think it's going to require a much more in-depth study of this guy.
Yeah, and the wife is out there, and she had weapons and passports and cash with her. So this story is clearly not done unfolding. Joe Hanneman, thanks so much for all the time here today. Great work.
Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with some MAHA updates after this. Well, you'll remember the time, all the vaccine propaganda, it was oddly coordinated during the COVID era. Now, if you forgot, here's the cringe-inducing bit from The Late Show with Stephen Colbert to refresh your memory.
The vaccine.
Well, Big Pharma might want to call a PR doctor because RFK Jr. just took a scalpel to their precious ad dollars, and he's not the only one coming for them. Matthew, this seems like a long time coming. We've had to suffer through all of these Big Pharma ads. Oh, all these shows brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah, this is a very, very big deal. I mean, this is huge, as the president would say, because you have to understand how many factors are at play. A is the actual physical health of all Americans. You might consider that important. Everyone's doing a wellness check these days because they realize we're being poisoned in many ways, and our system, when it comes to what we put into our bodies, is screwed, whether you're talking about food or whether you're talking about medicine. The very basics of what make human life worth living. And, our standard of living has gone down even though we're wealthy. We know there's a problem there. So this is directly affecting our health. But B, in just as exciting, maybe even more exciting for me, is the entire media ecosystem is surviving. It's hanging on by a thread. I mean, the cables are hanging on the precipice, and they know they're gonna fall, right, any second. What's propping them up? You have the NFL, and you got Big Pharma. And if you take Big Pharma away, they are in serious trouble because it's not clear where that ad money is going to come from. We've basically subsidized propaganda for the last 5 years based on billions of dollars from these companies who are, not really free market companies anyway. The whole thing is a sham. So if you take that leg out from under them, which is very smart, which is what the Trump administration is looking to do, you're talking about watching some of the big cable and some of the networks go through some really hard times.
I'm sure everyone in our audience will be so sad to see CNN and MSNBC lose all their Big Pharma ad revenue. But what really just blows my mind, right? And this is like always the leftist argument is like, why can't we be more like Europe? Well, they don't even allow this, right? It's only the United States and New Zealand that allows the direct-to-consumer drug ads. And, okay, you know what? In this case, go be like Europe. Don't let this happen.
Yeah, and why do they do that? This is not a free speech issue. This is about, are you going to let people, give them the opportunity to be snake oil salesmen to the American people? It's not something you want to mess with, right? You don't want medicine to be that kind of thing where all I have to do is show you an ad so that you buy it, so I can entice you, to buy my product. You shouldn't sell medicine that way, right? That's not what the thing is. But we live in a world where, I'm looking at my notes here. It's like, do I believe this? Well, I do, because I think Jill had something to do with. But Travis Kelce's salary was $17 million last year, and he earned $20 million from Pfizer. What are we even doing here? Like, what are we even doing? That's the kind of thing. Is that going to help people be healthy? Why are you doing that? Why do you need to do that if your medicine makes people healthy? That's a scary situation, but what is significant is we are actually seeing the administration in a variety of ways attack this nonsense, and that's going to change a lot for a lot of people for the good.
And I think this hand ties to the other one in that we just saw companies like General Mills and Kraft come out and say they aren't going to use artificial dyes in their food anymore. Now, if your food is actually healthier, maybe, just maybe, you won't need to go through and take all of the pharma drugs later in life, right? If you're actually eating the good things, this might actually be a huge shift that we were promised, from RFK Jr. actually coming through on this. So my question to you is, are corporations now finally feeling this pressure?
Yeah, so look, this is how law works, and this is where libertarians get it a little wrong. They make some great points, but, law does change behavior. Law and policy changes behavior. And ultimately, what law is supposed to do is make it so that you just act in a way that's good for everybody regardless, right? So, think about traffic law. Why do you want traffic law there? Not so you have to think about it all the time, but so you don't have to think about it, so you can travel safely, right? And lives are protected. You establish a habit that's actually good. Well, think about immigration, right? That's what the self-deportation is about. Can we get to the place where we don't have to spend any taxpayer money or less taxpayer money than we would going after people if people just leave? We want them to make it uncomfortable, so they just leave of their own accord. Well, it's the same with the big corporations. Now, you can't trust them, right? These are still, you can't trust a lot of these moves. Some of it is PR. But what you see happening now is these large corporations know that in order to sell products to the American people, this is actually getting to a partial free market solution, is that they realize that it's up. Everyone knows what's going on. RFK, et cetera, has very interesting policies to protect people, and they themselves then are going to start advertising the fact, hey, we don't use these dyes. We realize there's a problem. Here are our practices. Please buy our product. And that's a race to the top. That's healthy. That would be the kind of advertising we would need and want. And so, kudos to RFK Jr. This is some of the most important stuff going on in the entire administration that actually impacts every American, even your physical body.
What I love about this, it's not just make America healthy again as a slogan, but they're actually tying it in to tangible results. We're actually seeing the government is actually governing and doing things that are helping the American people. This is the step that we needed to see.
Yeah, this is the good stuff you have to enjoy. And, when you see General Mills and these companies just taking matters in their own hands, right? And
which is exactly what we want.
That means you are winning. And then you'll get the naysayers like, oh, they still do this in a healthy thing here, or this is just PR. I don't care. Take the W. The right doesn't understand how to win. Take the win because they are now paying attention and they're now taking action based on what MAGA is promoting throughout the country.
Listen, we often have our friend Hillary Kennedy come in for a lot of these MAGA segments. She's out there, she's eating clean, she's doing all of the right things. But listen, I still like the snacks. So if you can just go through and do whatever you need to do to make them healthier so I don't need all the big pharma later in life, I appreciate that. And with that, don't go anywhere. We'll come back and we'll actually have more for me to rant about. It'll be Caitlin Clark and how the WNBA is trying to take her down one game at a time. We can't let that happen. Don't go anywhere. If you missed it last night, the Indiana Fever's Caitlin Clark played against the Connecticut Sun, but the headline wasn't the final score. It was the fact that Caitlin Clark was eye gouged and pushed to the ground, and this continues for some reason in the WNBA where they let this happen to the league's star player. So I posted on X. The WNBA has a large new audience because of Caitlin Clark, but they hate it. Is this a sign of the bigger issues in this country, and can it be resolved? Let's go ahead and start with Adam, who says the WNBA, as it currently exists, cannot be saved. We need wholesale change and new management and culture. Make Jason Whitlock the commissioner tomorrow. Now, I will say, I think I love Caitlin Clark a little bit more, but Jason Whitlock does love Caitlin Clark. I hear him talk about her all the time on his show, but I would be absolutely willing to take Adam up on this and make Jason Whitlock the commissioner of the WNBA tomorrow. Things would get immediately better.
Okay, this is the best reply of the week, I think. The idea of Jason Whitlock becoming the commissioner of the WNBA. And, hey, I would start watching it if that was the case. I know that I would start watching because I would have absolute confidence that Jason Whitlock would do amazing things. Incredible things would be happening in the NBA if Jason Whitlock was the commissioner. So kudos to you, because that's the best idea of the week.
It's the WNBA for you. It's not the NBA.
Did I just say the NBA?
Yeah, but that's fine.
The WNBA.
It would also probably include the NBA as well. Let's go ahead.
If he was commissioner of the NBA, that might be even better. But yes, WNBA, Jason Whitlock commissioner, 100% in, would make it interesting.
You would start watching. Kim has a different idea. Kim says, stop watching. Make the communist NBA put 100% of the bill for this nutty social experiment. Demand more drug testing, too. Humans aren't naturally this violent day in and day on. What are they on?
Okay. There's one thing that we should say about basketball when people say this is that it's much more intense personally, right? I mean, if you took a regular person, right, and you put them in the ring, and you get them down there, and you have cameras on them, and millions of people watching them, and you're one-on-one with someone, most people would actually be even more violent, right? I mean, it takes a sort of training to get used to that. But nonetheless, she has a great point about what's going on in the WNBA. I assume they already drug test, though, right?
They do. But maybe Kim wants to see that upped.
Yeah, she wants to
see
back
that,
it up.
That way upped from what they do now. So let's go ahead and round out the replies for the day with Ronnie. And this might be my favorite one. That was your favorite one. This one might be my favorite one. It can be resolved only one way. CC has to win some championships. That's what I'm talking about here. Listen, once she has the crown, maybe they'll stop. Maybe. It's probably not going to. They'll probably hate her even more then, because they hate all of the popularity that she has brought to the game right now. They hate her, Matthew, because she's a straight, white woman. If she were trans, they would love her. She would be the best thing that has ever happened to this league. But she's straight, and she is white, and therefore we cannot cheer for that.
I'm assuming if she was lesbian and white, that might be okay, right?
Some combination of not straight and white. That's what you need.
Not all three. You can't be all three. Look, winning a championship, I guess my question would be, without being a huge fan and watching the WNBA basically at all, I would question this in terms of, if the league is really this corrupt and they're allowing this to happen, then wouldn't you think it'd be rigged against her? I mean, she basically has to defeat the entire league.
Well, listen, the New York Liberty helped my Fever out last night. The Fever won the game, and they are now going to be in the Commissioner's Cup. It's going to be on July 1st. I can tell you what I'm doing that night. It's like the little mid-season thing that they could do just to get a little bit more popularity out there. And they're lucky that they have my girl now in their mid-season Commissioner's Cup, or nobody else would watch. Now the ratings are going to be huge. They should thank her and stop beating her up.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems like to me like this is not a solvable problem in that league.
Well, it feels like this is a situation where, can't we all just come together? Can't everybody just get along? That's what we need to have. And that's also what we need to have, just to bring it back now to everything that we've been talking about throughout the rest of the show. Within the Trump administration and the coalitions that have been built, and they, we might need to take some of that advice. Can't we all just get along right now within the administration?
Yeah, here's the thing, Jill. This is a really important point, and everyone on the right needs to think about this deeply this week. We've reached the point in the administration where real people have to do real things, real decisions have to be made. The rubber hits the road. Everyone's in their offices, and we saw some of this in D.C. last week. So now the next natural thing. This is natural. This is normal. This is what happens in administrations. This is what happens when you represent a majority coalition that has lots of different interests and groups and people within it. They start to fight over what the outcomes are actually going to be. That is what this republic is all about. That's normal. That welcome to politics, right? So what's going on right now is everyone's realizing that the stakes are high because the stakes are shaping the new potential majority coalition for the next decade or more that runs America. And so right now on the right, we're arguing about Iran, Israel, many other things. And what everyone needs to realize is among, a wide variety of people, we're going to have to allow for disagreement. And no one side is going to get what they want. And look, President Trump isn't dogmatic. President Trump isn't an ideologue. President Trump is going to figure it out on a case-by-case basis and ultimately help set and shape this coalition. But for everyone who's, arguing around him, purging, various factions and sides, I don't think is a good idea. I don't think it's going to work. I think we need to be able to come together and have these arguments out, and media outlets like Blaze will help do that, where, no one side's just going to get its way. You're going to have to argue. We're going to have opinions. Blaze as a whole definitely will have its own, its own positions in terms of what it thinks we should be doing, but generally we're gonna air a lot of opinions, and if we're gonna proceed forward as a movement, we're gonna have to have arguments without canceling people, and it's gonna be complicated, and you're just gonna have to get used to it and be an adult because that's what this is. Now, that being said, I don't mean that we shouldn't fight like cats and dogs. We shouldn't fight like crazy for what this coalition means after all these years and getting to this place. I'm saying that's the natural, normal thing. Let them fight. Let's do that, but let's do that in a way where we don't kill each other and squash this coalition.
I want to just look at Tulsi Gabbard for a minute because we see her. She wasn't invited to Camp David. Now she's back in the meetings. We heard from Chris Bedford earlier that he believes that, she still has time to work her way back into the good graces here with the administration.
Well, first off, you have to just discount, look, all this is bullshit. Right? I mean, everything we're talking about with her is all stuff that's in the press, that's being ginned up by her enemies. Like, oh, she wasn't at this meeting at Camp David. Does that mean anything or not? That may mean absolutely nothing, right? I mean, that may not mean anything. And then you see the defense, right? Well, she was just in the Situation Room. Well, that might not mean anything either, right? But what we do see, and you're certainly right to point it out, is that there was an attack on Tulsi. It appears like the administration was trying to show we're all coming together. Obviously, she has very powerful allies within that administration. And so far, the adults in the room seem to have prevailed. She's there, back in good graces. Okay, yeah. I mean, Trump is clearly annoyed a little bit that her name was brought up. But even then, how much of this division is really there? I don't know. But what we do know is we want to see one big happy coalition moving forward and be able to have debates outside the administration freely. And that's what we're going to promote here.
Tulsi, back in, back out. Who knows? The thing that I'm going to be watching tonight is the pizza tracker next to the Pentagon. I am going to see what is going to be escalating there. Are they getting all of the dominoes sent to them? I don't know, but I will be watching that tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.